The most arrogant kid I ever met walked into my courtroom on a Tuesday morning and told me I was powerless. His name was Derek Martinez, 21 years old, son of County Sheriff Roberto Martinez. By the time he left 15 minutes later, he understood exactly what real power looks like. It started with a DUI arrest that should have been straightforward. Saturday night around 11 p.m., Derek crashes his pickup truck into Mrs. Henderson's mailbox on Maple Street, a weird residential neighborhood where families sleep with their windows open, kids ride bikes on sidewalks. He's doing 40 in a 25 zone when he loses control and plows straight into the brick mailbox, completely destroying it and nearly taking out a fire hydrant. When patrol officers arrive, Derek is stumbling around the wreckage, reeking of alcohol, slurring his words, and can't walk a straight line if his life depended on it. Blood alcohol test shows .12, well over the .08 legal limit. Cut and dry DUI case, right? It should have been a routine booking, court appearance, and standard penalties. But nothing about the Martinez family was ever routine. Here's where it gets interesting. The arresting officer, Sergeant Williams, with 15 years on the force, with a spotless record, and has never had a corruption complaint, tries to process Derek normally. Standard procedure: handcuffs, Miranda rights, transport to the county jail for booking. That's when Derek starts making phone calls. Not to a lawyer, not to his mother, not even to a friend for bail money. No, he calls his father directly, Sheriff Roberto Martinez. "Dad," Derek says into his phone while sitting in the back of the patrol car, "these idiots arrested me. Fix this, now." Within 20 minutes, Sheriff Martinez shows up at the scene. Not in civilian clothes like a concerned father, but in full uniform, badge prominently displayed, acting like he's there in an official capacity rather than a personal one. "This is a family matter," Sheriff Martinez tells Sergeant Williams, his voice carrying that authority law enforcement officers use when they expect immediate compliance. "My son made a mistake tonight, had too much to drink, but we'll handle it privately. No need for charges, no need for paperwork. I'll make sure he gets home safe and deals with the consequences." No need for charges, for a DUI, for property damage, for reckless endangerment, because it's a family matter and the sheriff says so. Sergeant Williams, good cop with 15 years of experience and a backbone made of steel, explains patiently that drunk driving isn't a family matter, it's a public safety matter, that Mrs. Henderson's destroyed mailbox isn't a private issue, that Derek's blood alcohol level of .12 isn't something you handle with a family talk. "With respect, Sheriff," Williams says, "your son committed multiple violations tonight. I have to process these charges according to department policy." That's when Sheriff Martinez drops the mask and gets aggressive, steps closer to Williams, uses his height and position to intimidate. "Sergeant Williams," he says, voice getting harder, "you work for this county. I run this county. My son walks out of here tonight without charges, or you'll be directing traffic at school crossings in the morning. Are we clear?" Direct threat. Using official position to obstruct justice. Attempting to interfere with a legitimate arrest. All felonies, by the way. But Sheriff Martinez figures his badge makes him immune. But Sergeant Williams doesn't back down, doesn't blink. Don't let corruption win just because it wears a uniform. He files the charges anyway, follows proper procedure, documents everything, including the sheriff's attempted interference. Because that's what good cops do when they see the system trying to protect itself instead of serving justice. The next morning, I'm at my desk by 8:15, reviewing the night's arrests over Christina's strong Italian coffee. Derek Martinez's case file is right on top, and it's thicker than usual for a simple DUI. That's when I notice Sergeant Williams's supplemental report about Sheriff Martinez's interference. I've known Roberto Martinez for years. Good cop, mostly. Served the community well, kept crime rates down, ran a professional department. But success sometimes goes to people's heads, makes them think rules are for other people. Having power doesn't make you corrupt, but it sure reveals whether you were corrupt all along. 9:30 a.m. sharp, Derek Martinez strolls into my courtroom like he's arriving at a country club. Designer jeans, expensive sneakers, leather jacket that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. But it's not the clothes that bother me. It's the attitude, the swagger, the smirk that says, I know something you don't know. His father isn't with him. Probably figured his presence might draw unwanted attention after last night's interference. Smart move, actually, but it won't save his son from facing consequences. Derek Martinez, Christina calls from her desk, her voice carrying clearly through the courtroom. Driving under the influence, property damage, reckless driving, and resisting arrest. Up he walks to my bench, and I can already see the attitude radiating off him. Not worried like most DUI defendants. Not respectful like people who understand they broke serious laws. Not embarrassed like young people who made dangerous mistakes. Just annoyed that he has to be here. Like this is all some clerical error that will get sorted out once people understand who he is. Mr. Martinez, I begin, looking at his rap sheet and the incident reports. You're charged with operating a vehicle while intoxicated with a blood alcohol level of .12, property damage, and reckless driving. Do you understand these charges? Yeah, I understand them, he says, like he's bored talking.
This is one of those cases where entitlement doesn't just walk into a courtroom. It struts. A routine DUI turns into a full-blown test of power, privilege, and whether the law actually applies to everyone or just most people.
To his high school principal. But I think we need to clear something up here before this goes any further. Clear something up. The phrase entitled people use when they think their connections trump the law. What needs clearing up, Mr. Martinez? Look, Judge, he says, leaning casually against the defendant's table like he's lounging at a bar. I know my dad already talked to people about this situation. This whole thing is just a big misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. A misunderstanding. Drunk driving is a misunderstanding. Destroying someone's property is a misunderstanding. Endangering an entire neighborhood is a misunderstanding. Mr. Martinez, your blood alcohol was .12, well over the legal limit. You crashed into Mrs. Henderson's mailbox doing 40 in a 25 zone. What part of that is a misunderstanding? The part where I get arrested and dragged through court like some common criminal, he shoots back, his voice getting sharper, more aggressive. Do you know who my father is, Judge? There it is. The magic phrase, entitled people think, solves all their problems. Yes, Mr. Martinez, I know who your father is. Do you know who I am? You're a municipal judge, he says, with a dismissive shrug. Local level stuff. Traffic tickets, small claims, minor violations. My dad runs the whole county sheriff's department. Different leagues, you know? Different leagues. Local level stuff. Like municipal court is somehow beneath county law enforcement. Like judges are minor officials compared to sheriffs. This kid has no understanding of how government works, how checks and balances function, how the separation of powers protects democracy. Mr. Martinez, I say, keeping my voice level but firm. In this courtroom, I decide what happens to people who break the law. That includes drunk drivers who happen to be related to law enforcement. That's when he laughs. Actually laughs at me, like I just told him the funniest joke he's ever heard. Throws his head back, makes sure everyone in the courtroom can see his amusement at my ignorance. Judge, he says through his laughter, with all due respect, you're completely powerless here. You think you make decisions? You think you control outcomes? My dad controls all the cops, all the arrests, all the evidence, all the enforcement. Without his cooperation, you can't do anything to anyone. You're just a guy in a robe pretending to have authority. Powerless. This entitled kid just told the sitting judge he's powerless because his daddy wears a badge. Just declared that law enforcement families are immune from judicial authority, that sheriffs outrank judges, that corruption trumps justice as long as it comes with a uniform. The courtroom goes dead silent. Everyone, other defendants waiting for their cases, court officers, bail bondsmen, even Christina, is staring at this kid who just declared that judges have no authority over sheriffs' families. You can feel the shock in the air, the collective intake of breath from people who understand they just witnessed something unprecedented. Mr. Martinez, I say, standing up from my bench slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of the moment settle on everyone present. Did you just tell me I'm powerless? I'm just stating facts, he replies with that same arrogant smirk, that supreme confidence of someone who's never faced real consequences. You need evidence to convict people, right? My dad controls the evidence. You need police cooperation for enforcement? My dad controls the police. You need jail space for sentences? My dad runs the jail. So yeah, when it comes to my family, you're pretty much powerless. That's just reality. He actually thinks the justice system is some kind of game where his father holds all the cards. That sheriffs are above judges. That law enforcement families are immune from consequences. That badges create...
Let's pause here, because what you just heard is not just unethical, it's criminal. A sheriff attempting to shut down a DUI arrest? That's obstruction of justice, abuse of authority, and intimidation, all felonies. This isn't a dad helping his kid. This is the system trying to protect itself.
A separate class of citizenship with special privileges and protections. Behind Derek, I can see other defendants watching this exchange with amazement. Working people mostly. Folks who've never imagined telling a judge he's powerless. People who understand that showing respect in a courtroom isn't optional. That challenging judicial authority is like challenging gravity. It might feel good for a moment, but the landing is going to hurt. Mr. Martinez, I continue, my voice carrying clearly through the silent courtroom. You seem to have a fundamental misunderstanding about how the justice system works in America. I understand perfectly, he says, crossing his arms like a petulant teenager. Power protects power. Money protects money. Badges protect badges. My dad has real power. Guns, badges, jail cells, the ability to make people's lives very difficult. You just have a robe and a wooden hammer. Just a robe and a gavel. This kid thinks judicial authority is costume jewelry compared to his father's badge. He sees democracy as a hierarchy, with law enforcement at the top and judges somewhere below, taking orders instead of giving them. Mr. Martinez, let me show you what real power looks like in a democracy. I sentence him to the maximum penalty for first offense DUI, 6 months license suspension, $1,000 fine, 40 hours community service, mandatory alcohol education, and 60 days in county jail with work release. His smirk disappears instantly. What? You can't do that. I just did. Bailiff, please take Mr. Martinez into custody. "Wait," he shouts, as Officer Rodriguez approaches with handcuffs. "My father won't allow this." "Your father has no authority in my courtroom." "He'll have you removed. He'll make sure you never work again." "Mr. Martinez, threatening a judge is contempt of court. That's an additional 30 days. As they cuff him and read his Miranda rights, Derek keeps yelling about his father, about how this won't stand, about how I don't understand who I'm messing with. But here's the beautiful thing about justice. It doesn't care who your father is. 2 hours later, Sheriff Martinez calls. "Judge, I need to discuss my son's situation." "Sheriff, your son was sentenced according to law. There's nothing to discuss." "Judge, Derek is a good kid who made one bad decision. Surely we can work something out." "Sheriff, the law doesn't make exceptions for law enforcement families." "Judge, I've served this community for 25 years. I think that earns some consideration." "Sheriff, your service is commendable, but it doesn't purchase immunity for your son." Long pause. When he speaks again, his voice is colder. "Judge, I control all law enforcement in this county. Without my cooperation, your courtroom becomes powerless." Now the sheriff is threatening me too. "Sheriff, are you threatening this court?" "I'm explaining reality." "Sheriff Martinez, if you interfere with your son's sentence, I'll hold you in contempt and have you arrested by state police." I hang up and call the state attorney general's office. Within an hour, 2 state investigators are taking my statement about attempted interference. The real test comes that evening. Derek is supposed to report to county jail for his first night. 8 p.m. deadline comes and goes. No Derek. I call the jail directly. Sheriff Martinez has been there all evening, actively preventing his son from serving his sentence. I call state police. "This is Judge Caprio. I need a warrant executed for failure to report." Within 30 minutes, state troopers arrest Derek at a party, still drinking, celebrating his father's protection. They transport him to state holding, bypassing county jail entirely. Next morning, Derek's back in my courtroom, in orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. His arrogance is gone. "Mr. Martinez, you failed to report for sentencing. That's a violation." "Your Honor."
This right here is where systems either rot or resist. Sergeant Williams does what real law enforcement is supposed to do. He documents everything. Because the strongest weapon against corruption isn't force. It's a paper trail.
There was confusion. "Mr. Martinez, 8 p.m. is not confusing. Your father preventing you from serving is obstruction of justice." "Your Honor, I want to apologize. Mr. Martinez, for failure to report, I'm adding 90 days to your sentence. For your father's interference, I'm referring this to the State Attorney General for investigation." Derek's face goes white. "You're going to have my father arrested?" "Your father attempted to obstruct justice. That's a felony, regardless of what badge he wears." 2 weeks later, Sheriff Roberto Martinez was arrested by state investigators. Derek served his full sentence in state custody with no special treatment. 6 months after his release, Derek came back to speak at a program for young offenders. "Your Honor," he said, "I want to tell these kids what I learned about real power. I thought my dad's badge made me untouchable. I thought judges were powerless compared to law enforcement. I was completely wrong." He turned to the teenagers. "Real power isn't about who you know. Real power is accountability. This judge taught me that nobody is above the law." Derek completed college, became a counselor. His father served 18 months in federal prison and lost his position as sheriff. The new sheriff, Captain Rodriguez, stopped by my chambers. Judge, the Martinez case changed everything in our department. When Derek told you that you were powerless, what did you think? I thought about every citizen who's been told connections matter more than a war. I decided to prove them wrong. Real power isn't about badges or guns. Real power is ensuring justice applies equally to everyone. Derek Martinez learned that judicial power isn't costume jewelry. It's the foundation of democracy itself. His father learned that wearing a badge doesn't place you above the law. My father used to say, "Frank, power without accountability is just tyranny." The Martinez family learned that lesson the hard way. I'm Frank Caprio. Remember, in America, the law is the ultimate power, and nobody is above it. Thanks for listening, and God bless.
This is where Derek makes a fatal mistake. Not legally, but intellectually. He thinks government is a hierarchy where badges outrank judges. In reality, judges don't enforce laws. They interpret them, and that makes their authority quieter, but far more dangerous.